and welcome back to another episode of the Boropolis podcast. Now, this is a slightly different one to what we usually do, slightly different from the weekly episodes that we usually record. This is a summary of everything which happened in the transfer window, our opinions on the moves, the incomings, the outgoings, and of course, I'm joined with Nathan the day after deadline day. It wasn't as exciting as we first hoped, really, was it, Nathan?
No, it was one of those days where I think the anticipation builds up and you expect all different links that have come out of complete nowhere. But yeah, it wasn't to be. There was just the standard names that had already been mentioned, few outgoings that had already kind of been expected, and no fresh names mentioned, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was the case. Obviously, we were all hoping for that random name to crop up at 4:00. I think your guess on the podcast was Andy Carroll, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I seen that he's actually linked with a move to Reading at the minute, so he might get his free agent move, but it wasn't Middlesbrough in the end. Now, I think straight away we've just really got to get in from incomings. Now we're going to try and cover it in the order of which the transfers come in. So first of all, Joe Lumley was brought in on a free from QPR. Were you happy to see Joe Lumley sign as number one this summer?
Well, when Lumley came in, it's one that I kind of thought initially we'd be signing him as a backup, which it isn't actually how it's happened. Lumley was the number 2 at QPR behind Seny Dieng last season. And he did come on at the Riverside after Dieng was sent off last term. And he made a worldy save as well. I can't remember who it was from.
Maybe I think he made George a few, didn't he? If I remember rightly.
Yeah, man of the match. I mean, typical. But yeah, Lumley, he's an interesting one. He's had a few hit and miss games this season so far. The QPR game, he was a bit of a shambles, but then
to put it nicely.
Yeah, to put it nicely. But yeah, then the Derby game, the game after, he made amends and was probably man of the match that day as well. So yeah, a good signing on a free as well, yeah.
Yeah, and another 3. Dear me. 3. This happened last time, and I'm trying not to just lose my words all of a sudden again. Another 3 that was brought in. Sammy Amiobi. Now, I mean, his performances and time at Middlesbrough has gone about as well as me in the last podcast trying to get my words out, really. So he hasn't played for us yet. It seems like from the murmurs and rumours that we've heard that it could be a long-term knee injury. I mean, there's not really much to be said about Sammy Amiobi, is there?
No, I think it's one of those where you take the risk of signing someone on a free transfer. Amiobi, of course, having played for us years and years ago on loan from Newcastle, and I remember him scoring a quite good goal on his debut. I think it was against Cardiff where he dribbled in and put one in top corner.
It was, wasn't it? Everyone wasn't really sure what to expect, and then he just turned into Messi for like a minute and then never really done anything else.
Yeah, so yeah, Amiobi coming in. I think you can tell that was a signing made by Neil Warnock. Warnock at the time said that he wanted to see what he could do with Amiobi, but he hasn't made an appearance in pre-season, never mind in the league or the cup this season. So yeah, the murmurs look to be quite true and unfortunate, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at this list now. We really did, to be fair to us, utilise the free agent market. But the first summer signing with an actual fee was the big man, Uche Ikpeazu, brought in from Wickham for a rumoured 750,000 rise into $1 million. I think if he played for England or I think it was Nigeria that Warnock said, one of the two that we also
Nigeria and Uganda, I think it is. He's got Ugandan and Nigerian parents.
Right, okay. So yeah, if Uche fancies getting in the squad and giving us a bit of a cash bonus, that would be brilliant. But yeah, Ikpeazu, one of the players that's really featured the most from our summer signings so far. He has been somewhat of a revelation, to be fair, so far.
Yeah, I think he's been brilliant for us so far. I think he's been everything that we've been crying out for in recent years. A centre forward that puts himself about. He's a physical presence, likes to pin his defender and get the ball down and bring others into play. And of course, he's got his 2 goals so far this season, and he loves a good celebration as well. So yeah, he's
He
someone, isn't he?
loves the celebration. I think more than anyone I can remember for a while, to be fair. He really does. Every goal gives it 100%. And I've got a
Yeah,
lot of time for that as well.
especially for a centre forward as well. He absolutely loves it. He's meant to score goals, but absolutely loves it.
Yeah,
Haaland's the same. They both love it. Just love of celebration.
yeah. Well, I've got plenty of time for it. I'm sure everyone else does, to be fair. But yeah, on Ikpeazu, I think it was interesting, and a lot of people were sort of confused when Warnock come out earlier on in the summer and said that initially Ikpeazu had been signed as a third choice or a second choice. And to be honest, now I think potentially because of the fact that we didn't manage to get a third striker in on deadline day, but in fairness, as part of the reason, because of how well he's played, he's now really probably our number one choice striker for me. Obviously, we brought in Sparrow, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But Uche has sort of cemented himself as one of the first names on the team sheet.
Yeah, he's certainly staking his claim to be the number 9 for us, isn't he? I think he's certainly proven why we shelled out for him. Really, he's uh, he's just he's just brilliant. He's been absolutely fantastic in the games I've seen him, and I've only seen him twice. And he's
Yeah,
just bullying his defenders, running all over, putting tackles in. Oh, he's class. Everything that we've wanted in a centre forward for years.
yeah. I couldn't have said it better, really, to be honest, Nathan. Next through the door in the summer was Lee Peltier. Now, it was a bit of a shock, one of these signings that was never rumoured, never linked, and then just one day it was announced on Twitter that we'd brought him in. And I think, to be honest, it was sort of one of them that before the summer started, you probably would have thought at one stage or another we're going to get linked with Lee Pellier. But he's come through the door, and I don't think he'll have a massive impact. But for an experienced head and a bit of cover, I think it was probably a good bit of business.
Yeah, of course. Warnock has worked with Peltier before at Leeds, I think it was, and at Cardiff as well. So yeah, he's only played the one league game so far this season at Derby,
And he got
and
some bits in the cup as well, didn't he?
yeah, so he provides a good utility option. Really, can fill in at right back, can play in defensive midfield according to Neil Warnock, and yeah, I think there's no harm in doing a deal for Lee Peltier.
Yeah, I think next up, really, one of my favourite signings so far. It's obviously early days again, but it was the second player that were brought in for a fee, and it was Matt Crooks. Now, for me personally, when we first signed him, I was sort of a little bit skeptical almost, didn't really think that we needed another midfielder at that time. I don't think George Savile had left yet. Um, but yeah, again, like Ikpeazu, he's been a revelation and has really, out of the signings so far, settled in the best, probably.
Yeah, and the strangest thing is, I don't even think we've seen the best of him yet. I think he's been played out of position, really, from where he'd want to be played in that hole behind the striker. He's played off the right a few times, but yeah, he has impressed so far. He's very good with his feet because it's the old cliche, good feet for a big man. But yeah, he's been fantastic so far. Chipped in with a few goals as well, and he certainly helps us go getting forward and picking up balls off Uche.
Yeah, I think in that role, just playing off Uche, as you say, he's really going to be an asset this season. And I've said previously that he's even got George Friend potential because of how nice of a guy he seems, and just in general that we picked him up from a relegated team for a quite low fee, really. And yeah, I just think he works really hard, but as well as his hard work, he also delivers a real sort of a different option for the team, really. He's just something that we've never really had before, someone that is willing to make them late runs into the box. And I do think he'll score us a lot of goals this season.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with you.
yeah. So, next up, I think it's been everyone's favourite transfer of the window. There was so much build up, there was so many different reports. I think from when we first agreed the fee, it must have been at least 6 weeks until he was officially announced. He went away to the Olympics and we all watched him. Martin Payero. Now, this is a signing that I think any Middlesbrough fan will say did not expect in the slightest before the window started. And yeah, I mean, we're still yet to see the best of him and yet to see more than about 3 minutes of him actually playing at the Riverside. But yeah, what were your thoughts on our number 10 from Argentina coming in?
Well, when the link first arrived on Twitter on the Boropolis page,
I,
as per
I must
you,
say, I must say, the weirdest one ever. For whatever reason, maybe it was my intuition telling me or something. I was woken up at about 4 in the morning. I've just looked on Twitter. Not even, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting to be on Twitter at 4 in the morning, and seen some Argentinian journalists saying that we've agreed, and I think at the time it was 8 million that was being reported
yeah,
fee for Martin Payero, who I'd never heard of before. I mean, that went straight up on Twitter, and everyone was just immediately so excited for it. But yeah, I mean, Nathan, we're really hoping to see more of him, aren't we? We haven't really had a chance to make a judgment yet.
yeah. Well, I think he does need to settle in. We have discussed this previously. The link when it first came about was quite peculiar, really, when you hear all the reports coming from the club that we aren't going to be spending big at all. And then it's 8 million euros. And then people are all over bloody Google finding exchange rates, finding how much it is in millions of pounds.
Yeah.
And yeah, trying to work out the club's financial situation when really it has absolutely nothing to do with us, the club's
I
financial
mean,
situation.
it's amazing how many people, in us included, during the transfer window turn into accountants, agents, managers. It's fantastic to see really everyone getting different roles during the summer and trying to work things out. But of course, it's great to see. That's part of the excitement of the transfer window, isn't it?
Yeah, so of course the link leads everyone to the customary YouTube search and the compilations of Martin Payero, which are actually quite decent, to be fair. The ones on YouTube. Um, so yeah, everyone has a look at them, and then the weight comes from the Olympics. Piero's at the Olympics. Everyone's hoping that Payero doesn't even perform well because someone will come in and get him from under our noses.
Everyone's still scarred from Diego Forlan, aren't they?
Yeah. So everyone's hoping Argentina get knocked out in the first round of the group stage. So yeah, they do, and a few days after he's signed, sealed, and delivered, and me and you didn't want to believe it that when he was at Rockcliffe until he posted it that he was there himself.
And
So
quickly deleted it as well. He obviously got
yeah,
in trouble.
yeah. So we're there snapping screenshots of Piero's Instagram story to get up on the Boropolis page. But yeah, brilliant that he got finally through the door, and hopefully he gets settled in. Hopefully he has a Parmo, and hopefully he doesn't post it on his Twitter page that he's having one.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's never been a good sign for anyone. I mean, maybe he'll get a move to Barcelona in the next few years if he does. But yes, around about that time, it was the time that the Rodrigo Muniz links were coming out as well. Now, I mean, it was saga of the transfer window, really. It was on, it was off, it was back on. Neil Bowser and Leo were fighting with Flamengo to try and get a deal done. And in the end, it didn't happen. And he went to Fulham. And I think for years to come, that's probably going to be a bit of a joke that we're going to lose out on players to Fulham. But yeah, I mean, again, we've got a reserve judgment because he hasn't played for Fulham yet. And it's YouTube videos again that we're basing it off. But I think everyone was a little bit excited and probably quite disappointed when he didn't sign because the thought of a Brazilian number 9 coming in was quite exciting.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I think those links at the time to Payero and Muniz, they signalled kind of a change in the transfer business that we were looking at doing. If you look at those first 5 signings, I think it's clear to see that those signings are made by Neil Warnock, and literally those players are his signings.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Payero and Muniz, and they look much more like links that are coming from inside the club and from Leo's contacts, allegedly.
Yeah, it was, to be honest, nice to see. And obviously, it all really, I think in the space of a week or a fortnight, it all really felt like it rolled up into one that Kieran Scott was first being linked and the news that he was going to be coming into the club. And then obviously these overseas players were being linked. And it, like you said, it marked a change in what felt like transfer strategy because, in no disrespect to players like Uche and Crooks, obviously they've had a great impact, but there's a type of player that gets relegated from the Championship, and then there's a type of player where he's going to take time to acclimatise and come over, and people that we've never heard of before would be linked. And although everyone says that Kieran Scott can't have had any impact and he was on gardening leave, and I mean it's illegal. It is actually illegal that he could have been doing work for us, but there's still a small part of me that thinks, has he potentially had some say, or maybe a few, a little sticky note that he slid under someone's door that was off the radar or something like that?
Yeah, possibly. And I think if you look at those players that we brought in our incomings list, I think some of those must have had some sort of link to Kieran Scott. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it looks like the club are going in a different direction in this second half of the transfer window to the first. And of course, that's fair enough. Neil Warnock isn't going to be here forever. We will have a new manager relatively soon, most likely, unfortunately for me, because I do love Neil Warnock. But yeah, as I say, Warnock won't be here forever, and the club need to recruit for the future, not just for now.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 signings that were for now, as you say, Luke Daniels and Sol Bamba. I think they probably fall into the same bracket of they were never really coming in as first choice, but again, good options and good additions to what was still a thin squad then.
Yeah, from what I've seen from Brentford fans, I think they really fancy Luke Daniels. He's apparently one of the best number 2s in the Championship, according to the Bees fans. Of course, he was never going to really get a sniff in front of David Raya, who's pulling up trees in the Premier League so far this season. But yeah, a good option behind Joe Lumley. And of course, Sol Bamba. I mean, what a story for him. After suffering from illness in the last year, overcoming that, and yeah, signing for the Boro. Fantastic. Linking up with Neil Warnock again.
Yeah, it was a signing that, again, similar to Peltier, that everyone really sort of expected us to be linked with. And at first, I think it would be fair to say really that it was met with a little bit of negativity almost. And then from the training clips that we saw, and he played for the 23s at Redcar, and got some really good reviews from that. And then also played against Rotherham. And from that point onwards, I think people sort of realised that, hang on a second, Sol Bamba not so long ago was regarded as one of the best centre backs in the Championship. And yes, he's had his battle with cancer, and absolute credit to Sol Bamba that he's overcome that. And yeah, in the end, it was one where everyone thought it's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, and I think one of the main parts in the Sol Bamba deal as well is him becoming part of the coaching staff as well, learning from Neil Warnock, Ronnie Jepson, and Kevin Blackwell as well. And not only that, but his leadership qualities are. There's no need for them to be understated. They are fantastic. He's captained Cardiff. He's captained Leeds. He's definitely got leadership qualities in the dressing room. And even if he does not play all too many games this season, he'll certainly be a big part of that Middlesbrough dressing room.
Yeah, and just touching on Luke Daniels, just from my perspective, I also saw all of the good reviews that Luke Daniels had. And in fairness, I think a few Brentford fans were even saying, like, if David Raya wasn't our goalkeeper, Luke Daniels, we wouldn't mind if he was our number one. He is that good. So, I mean, potentially it's something to look out for across the season. If Lumley does, hopefully not, but if he does make a few mistakes and pressure starts building, that could be a change in terms of our number one. But yeah, both solid additions on a free. Now, another interesting one, really, and we've said previously, what a name as well, by the way. Toyosi Olasanya was brought in from Billericay. Now, it's certainly a gamble, and we've only briefly saw what he's capable of, but, it's an interesting signing, really.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a little bit of a risk from our part to go and sign Olasanya, but the reviews are there from the Billericay side. I think you mentioned previously that he scored back-to-back hat-tricks at Billericay last season, which is
and in any level of competitive football, if you're scoring back-to-back hat-wicks, Nathan, we'll go with it. If you're scoring back-to-back hat-wicks, then, it's some feat, really.
Yeah, and of course he's played at League One level, League One maybe, or League Two, I'm not sure, with Wimbledon before.
Yeah, Wimbledon.
They are in League One now, but years ago, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you've really taken my memory there. I'm not quite sure, to be fair, League One or League Two.
Yeah, so he played at Wimbledon before, and I think he'd been on trial at Chelsea. So you don't just get a trial there at Chelsea for free, do you? So he's certainly a risk, and I think from what Boro fans have seen of him so far in his short cameo on Saturday, I think they were relatively impressed with him trying to get forward.
Yeah, I mean, he was impressive first and foremost for his speed, really. I mean, he turned Darragh Lenihan, and it looked as though, we were probably going to score. And then what followed wouldn't have looked out of place, really, on Monday Night Raw, to be honest. It was the drag of the shirt. I mean, the shirt might as well have been off Olasanya altogether. But then, I mean, it was a choke slam, to be honest, from Mr. T, as Neil Warnock likes to call him. So, yeah, it was interesting to see him, and there was promising signs from his debut, his pace, and he could have potentially scored as well and got himself in some good positions. So, yeah, it's a gamble, but it's one for a low fee, and one that hopefully could prove to be a bit of a masterstroke from Neil Warnock. Now I want to really probably the three most eye-catching signings of the summer, and three loan signings. First up was Onel Hernandez. Now, we briefly spoke about it in the last podcast, but it's a player that we needed, a player of his caliber and a player with his attributes. It's just something that the team was crying out for.
Yeah, and of course he's done it in the Championship before, playing in that 18-19 Norwich City squad that got promoted from the Championship under Daniel Farke. I think he was brilliant during that season. Of course, he scored the winner at the Riverside in their 1-0 win. And he has bags of pace, trickery, can cut inside, can go down the wing. Yeah, everything that we've been crying out for, as you say, Chris.
Yeah, and next through the door on deadline day, of course, we're recording this the day after. It was Andras Sparar. Now, similarly to Payero, it felt like this link first come out about 10 years ago and has only just been completed now. But yeah, it took its time, but it did eventually get over the line. And from what we obviously heard from Yannick Bolasie, that this is a European pedigree striker and someone that, given the service and given the chances, will score goals.
Yeah, I think that quote from Yannick, European pedigree striker, tells you everything that you need to know, really. I think if you're not excited by this signing when you've heard that, I think you're probably stupid, really.
What way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's played in the Europa League for Sporting Lisbon. He was on loan at Braga last season. Yeah, he's played around Europe, and of course he leads the line for his country as well. So yeah, I don't see why anyone wouldn't be excited by this side, and I think he'd be a very good option for us.
Yeah, and as well as his football ability, I'm sure you saw on Twitter yesterday, he has got some very, very cute looking dogs, and he's got some great posts with them on Instagram. So, I mean, if he doesn't work out, at least he's got nice dogs on his Instagram, I suppose.
Yeah, I think his dogs need a mate date with Neil Warnock's dogs, don't they? That
Yeah,
photo
I
was
mean,
class. That photo of Neil Warnock
I
with his
have
dogs.
I hadn't thought about that, but that really could be some groundbreaking stuff. To be honest, I think as a bit of manager and new signing bonding, I think. To be honest, I think that could. I'm just really thinking about that now and how it would go, and whereabouts they would go. To be honest, who do you think would pick up the dog mess? Who do you think would be the one that would just sort of volunteer, or do you think it would be they'll just do it for each other's dogs, or who do you think would be that the
I think
person out to them?
Warnock's got to take control, doesn't he? He's got to establish dominance straight away.
Yeah, yeah, I think you could be right with that one. I mean, cutting edge insight from us on new signings and their dogs. But yes, one man that was the final signing of the summer. It was James Lias Saliki, and now this one again. It wasn't. It didn't even seem to be a long, drawn out transfer because it was only really rumoured and then happened in the space of a week. But there was that many twists and turns in the space of about 5 days. No one really knew whether it was going to get done or not. But in the end, we brought the left-footed midfielder in that is Saliki, and he's got some great pedigree. To be fair, you know he was playing in the Champions League last season, so it's probably we've got a reserve judgment again, but from the outside looking in, a bit of an upgrade on what we had in midfield, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. As you say, we need to reserve judgment because I don't think me or you have got any sort of viewing of Saliki prior
Yeah,
to YouTube video searches. But yeah, I saw a video of him on Twitter yesterday, maybe, of him doing an elastico down the line and putting a ball across, and I thought, all right, well, get him
yeah,
in.
I'll have a bit of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm on that. Yeah,
if he's gonna be using the Riverside as his dance floor, then yeah, brilliant. Do it. We'll get him in. But yeah, he provides a good option in midfield in there. He's played in the Champions League, which is, of course, that like the highest level of any player that they can play in club competition in Europe. So yeah, I think he'd be a good signing for us. And of course, a left-footed midfielder is something a bit different that we don't have already.
yeah, and I mean that left-footed balance for me is something that we've been crying out for a while. To be fair, I can't really remember the last left-footed, sitting midfielder, or box to box, whatever. He can play both roles from what we've seen and heard of him. But yeah, it's nice to have a left footer just in terms of the balance. Obviously, it'll be Johnny Howson that probably plays alongside him, and I think hopefully they can complement each other, and they can form a formidable pair, and similar to what we saw of Adam Clayton and Grant Ledbetter a few years back.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone rivals Clayton and Ledbetter, that'd be absolutely outstanding. But yeah, I think Howson will be the one that sits in there, whereas Saliki's the legs around him to get about and harass the opposition.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Saliki was brought in. One player that looked like he was going to sign, just finishing up on incomings, was Mitchell van Bergen. Now, as we briefly mentioned it in the podcast, his decision was to go and play in the same league as Messi. But he could have come and played in Stoke on a Tuesday night, a cold Tuesday night. As the saying goes, I mean, I can't understand his decision really, Nathan.
No, I think it's a horrendous decision, really. I mean, parmos and pies over frogs' legs and pan of chocolates, 100%.
Yeah, well, that was what we went with the other day, wasn't it? And I mean, fair play to Mitchell van Bergen. Maybe he didn't fancy it. One player that also you probably won't even remember him being linked, but just from a little, for anyone that listened to the podcast before last, we did sort of almost trademark and coin the phrase the Baba Rahman bandwagon. Now, he did end up joining Reading on loan. Really, Nathan, how upset are you that you won't be seeing Baba Rahman at the Riverside?
Oh, gutted, if I'm honest. I mean, we still need that left-sided player as well that we haven't sorted that yet. So hopefully we'll be looking to exploit the free agent market. But yeah, gutted that we haven't got the Baba Rahman bandwagon at the Riverside. But
Yeah,
he'll be playing against us in a few weeks' time because we've got Reading.
yeah, and I mean, hopefully he doesn't score because we were that on board with the bandwagon that potentially we'll have to change allegiance and just decide to follow Baba Rahman rather than following Middlesbrough. To be honest, I think the bandwagon was going to be that big, really.
Massive. Everyone had been on it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, 1,000,000%, Nathan. Now, just in terms of incomings as well, you sort of went over it there a little bit, but is there any free agent left backs or strikers that have really caught your attention? I know a few people were mentioning Neil Taylor last night that was released by Aston Villa. It does feel like a Neil Warnock type of signing, I must say, but is there any names that have caught your eye that are free agents?
Yeah, of course, Taylor's been mentioned and he has bags of championship experience. But I think the one that has always stood out to me since we first got sort of mentioned with him was Kean Bryan at Sheffield United last season. Now a free agent. He's 24 years old, so still relatively young. He can play on the left side of a back three, as he did for Sheffield United last season in parts, and he can play at left back. So I think he's the one that we should be aiming for, really, with that versatility along that left-hand side of defence. He can certainly fill in behind Bowler.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, doesn't it? Obviously, we have reverted back to a three at the back with three centre-backs and obviously the wing-backs at times this season. And I think that would obviously work out with Kean Bryan being able to play as that left-sided centre-back. But of course, he can also cover at left-back in a back four. And I think really there's already been the link there. I think it makes perfect sense for us to go out and get that deal over the line with no time constraints on it as well. Obviously, there's no big yellow ticker on Sky Sports today. I mean, it's debatable whether that's a good thing or not. I'm sure there's plenty of people which have their own feelings about the way deadline day is these days.
Yeah.
But yes, moving on to outgoings from the club. Now we've got the list up beside us. first departure of the window was Zach Hemming going out on loan to Kilmarnock, I believe it was. Now, of course, Zach Hemming has never really been involved yet with the first team setup, but for a goalkeeper to go out on loan to the Scottish leagues and get some experiences, yeah, we can't really pick out any negatives from that. But moving on to someone that was very much involved with the first team last season, George Saville departed and went back to Millwall now. How did you feel about this transfer? Is George Saville someone that you would have liked to have seen stay, or perhaps did you think it was the right time for him to go?
I think I was probably quite shocked when this link first came about. I thought he'd be a big part of Warnock's plans going into the season, really. Of course, Saville chipped in with quite a few goals last season, driving on from midfield. But I think those goals that he chipped in with kind of overshadowed how he sort of played really in some games. I think I know it's not his fault that we paid as much money as we did for him in an era where Tony Pulis was trying to balance the books. So the transfer fee doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I mean, balancing the books in Tony Pulis's book is bringing in Aidan Flint, bringing in Paddy McNair. Now, I know Paddy has stayed and it's worked out in the long run, but in the short term, he didn't even play him. Aidan Flint was another one for 6 million that he brought in. So, I mean, all really, really clever decisions from Tony Pulis to spend that much money on 3 players.
Yeah, to spend that much money on them whilst also selling Traore, Gibson, and Bamford all in the same window. So yeah, fantastic from Tony Pulis. But anyway, George Saville, yeah, shocked, but I think that it's probably fair enough that he did leave in the end. We have brought in replacements in midfield with the options of Crooks, Payero, and Saliki all being able to play in that central midfield role. And I did see that Warnock had mentioned that Saville did end up going back to Millwall because of family issues, personal reasons. So fair play, good luck to him.
Yeah, as you say, good luck to George Saville now. I know he definitely split opinion, and I was always one of those that was never really too sure what he brought to the Middlesbrough team, really. And I mean, he did improve last season, as you say, he contributed with goals and assists. But I think, to be honest, it was the right time for him to move on. And yeah, just best of luck to George Saville, really, because although he split opinion, it always felt like he tried his best and got stuck in, and by all accounts was a nice guy, really.
Yeah, and I'll never forget going to Bolton away on a Tuesday night and seeing us play 5 at the back against Bolton, who were ridden with debt in administration, already relegated. We played 5 at the back, and we had George Saville playing left wing back and Johnny Howson playing right wing back. Oh my God, just never again, never again.
Yeah, never again, as you say. I mean, a long list of confusing decisions that Tony Pulis made. But I mean, this isn't about Tony Pulis, so let's just move on from that. Interesting man. So yes, another departure from the midfield area was Lewis Wing. Now, from when he come back from Rotherham, he'd had absolutely rave reviews and scored some excellent goals. And he come back and even in pre-season, he was looking as good as he has been. There was a few goals from him. And then it looked like he could potentially even have an impact again this season, but that just wasn't to be, and he was moved out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday. Now, I've sort of got 2 questions for you here. Firstly, would you have liked to have seen Lewis Wing stay around? And secondly, there's been a few comments made recently from Wing about the fact that he wanted to leave permanently and he wasn't sure why he wasn't allowed to. He signed an extension, and I mean, he wasn't really complementary in terms of Warnock's play style. I think he compared it to Tony Pulis. So how do you feel about his comments? But also, how do you feel about the fact that he was allowed to leave?
Well, firstly, I thought, yeah, he probably could have got a sniff this season. He was outstanding for Rotherham. He was definitely their standout player in that second half of last season. And of course, he did score a few rockets for them as well, which were definitely customary when watching him playing for Middlesbrough as well. But the second part of that question, I did not know that he'd said all those things actually. But one of those things I'd say is Tony Pulis gave him his debut, so I think he probably needs to slow down on the slander with that one. Playing in midfield in that 2018-19 season. I know he did play a little bit for Gary Monk as well, but yeah, I don't necessarily see why he'd be so upset with the play style, really, considering he played in a relegated side last season that struggled and did play a lot of long balls up to Crooks and Michael Smith as well. So, yeah, I mean, him signing that contract extension, I think that's more to
I think that's
defend,
for more our benefit in terms
yeah,
of if
defend
he
the
goes
club.
out this season and has a good season for Sheffield Wednesday. There'll be Sheffield Wednesday, I'm sure, and a lot of other teams that will be willing to pay a fee for him. So I think that's just, to be honest, that's good business from us to cover our backs for potentially getting a fee in the long run for Wing.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. That's all it's about. Just covering ourselves and earning us a few quid when Wing probably will leave at the end of this season.
Yeah. Now I'm just sort of gonna go off the order of which we've been going. It's sort of just been in order of when players left, but I'm just going to group up a few of the departures. And for me, they feel like they're in the same category. Hayden Hackney, Nathan Wood, Jack Robinson, Sol Bryn, and Ramon Burrell all left on loan. I think out of them, it would be Nathan Wood that is most established in the first team, but all young players going out on loan. Do you think that again it was just needed and they need some minutes? Is there any of those players that perhaps you may have kept around just for cover?
Um, Possibly just Jack Robinson, really, because he's left back cover. We need a left back in there. But yeah, they all needed to go out and get some minutes. That's what football's about. When you're just coming through, going out on loan, getting minutes in, and proving yourself at the level that you're going to play out there at. So yeah, good luck to all those lads.
Yeah, another loanee quickly that I forgot to mention there was Steve Walker that went out on loan to Tranmere. It's quite an interesting one with Steve Walker because I mean a few years ago, there was rumours that there was interest from Man United and Chelsea, and Middlesbrough were quick to try and get him tied down to a long-term contract. But then, ever since then, really, he's had a few loan moves. I think under Woodgate, he was involved a little bit with the first team, had a few starts, but these loan moves haven't really worked out. And I think, to be honest, he's probably disappointed that he wasn't involved with the first team at all during pre-season. Do you think this is actually a very big loan move for Steve Walker's career at Middlesbrough?
Yes, because of the fact that he's had a few so far. He's been on loan at MK Dons, which he was kind of in and out because they got promoted in that season from League Two to League One, I think it was. And then, of course, he was at Crewe for a little while, and then the league stopped because of COVID, and he received another promotion medal. And then, yeah, Crewe last season. I don't, from what I've seen, I don't think he really pulled up many trees. But yeah, this one is certainly a big move going down into League Two again with Tranmere, a big club for that division as well. So yeah, good luck to him. Hopefully, he bangs in a load of goals and comes back fresh.
Yeah, hopefully that is the case, as you say. Now, another loan exit who was certainly more involved with the first team last season and someone that really shone under Jonathan Woodgate. Hayden Coulson was allowed to leave on loan, and it really raised a lot of questions because of the fact that we were struggling so much with left back and depth there. For me, I think Hayden Coulson could well have done a job as a backup left back. Obviously, Warnock sees him as more of an attacking threat. We saw him playing the number 10 role even towards the back end of last season. But do you think that Coulson has been a little bit unfairly treated? He potentially could have stayed and even competed with Bowler for a starting spot.
I wouldn't necessarily think he's been unfairly treated, but um, yeah, I think he could have provided us with some valuable cover at left back, and I think it was strange for him to go out when he did really so early in the window. Bowler hadn't featured at all in pre-season at the time, and yeah, it was quite a strange one for him to be let go as soon as he was really. But I think going off the back end of last season, Warnock had stated in press conferences that players needed to prove themselves and he would give those players minutes. And I think Coulson was one of those players that was given minutes, albeit in a very confusing position in that number 10 role.
Yeah, that number 10 role will, a few of them performances probably will not be remembered in that 10 role. It was, it was quite a strange one playing Coulson there. But I think for me, Coulson could have stayed and probably wouldn't have played a lot this season. But I think it's just a case of Warnock doesn't see him as his type of player, really. I think that's the long and short of it now. There'll be a lot of opinions on whether when he comes back and Warnock moves on, whether he could potentially, play for us in the long run or be a part of the squad. But I think a loan move is probably the right move for him. I think he needs to be playing football and from what we've seen and heard so far, again, it seems as though he's had a good start of life at Ipswich. So, maybe they might look to make that a permanent signing if they, are promoted or maybe even if they stay in League One.
Yeah, who knows with Ipswich? They've certainly got a lot of players incoming, really. They've signed 19 players this
Yeah,
summer, which is
yeah. I mean,
outstanding.
we'll go on to speak about one more of Ipswich's signings, which is a real talking point from everyone's point of view. But yeah, we'll carry on back onto the order of departures, and another name that was probably unfairly treated. I think
Definitely.
definitely more than Hayden Coulson or anyone for that matter that left the club this summer. Chuba Akpom, countless times his name was brought up in press conferences, and really I think the move makes sense. It wasn't the right fit for him at Middlesbrough, but more in terms of Chuba, do you think that it was a little bit unfair how he was treated in his 1 year at the club?
Yeah, of course, we don't know the full story of what's happening behind the scenes, but from the outside looking in, it looks like he's just getting absolutely hounded by Warnock, doesn't it, really?
It's absolutely relentless. It's been, to be honest.
Yeah, every single week it seems that Tuba Akpom is not being the flavour of the month for Neil Warnock. But yeah, um, it's a shame it hasn't worked out. Warnock stated last season that Tuba was the man that he was looking to sign, and he did sign. He got 2-2 um, in his first two appearances for the club. But yeah, it didn't really work out towards the back end of last season. I think Tuba had lost a bit of confidence in himself. And he was not really a regular feature either for Boro up front. But yeah, as I say, gone back to Greece now. Hopefully, he finds his form again and is firing for Payero. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, just go with that. Yeah, I think that's the best way to go about it. Yeah. So deadline day, of course, yesterday, and when the rumours of James Leah Saliki were first announced, it sort of coincided with rumours that Sam Morsy was going to potentially be available on deadline day. And that turned out to be the case. Sam Morsy joined Ipswich in one of their many, many signings this summer. For me, I think Sam Morsy has a role and had a role to play in our squad. I think, he's more of position-wise a defensive midfielder, and I think with the injury problems that we had last year, I think if he'd have stayed, it certainly wouldn't have been a problem. I think he would have probably got his fair share of minutes, and a lot of people weren't happy about this transfer at all, to be honest. So, Nathan, what was your take on Sam Morsy's departure?
I think it's a bit of a strange one, really. I think for us this season, looking at that list of outgoings, Chuba Akpom featured in the game against QPR. Sam Morsy has featured in a few games this season, most recently the Derby away fixture, and of course Saturday against Blackburn, in which he was sent off.
And by the way, just quickly, Nathan, what a Sam Morsy-esque departure. Just get sent off as his last act as a Middlesbrough player.
I think it's crazy, yeah. I mean, he's only been here a season, and I think he's had 3 red cards, and two of them were rescinded, and this one we were appealing. So all of them, yeah. I think that shows the Championship referees' quality, if anything. But yeah, back to Sam Morsy. Yeah, I think it's a strange one again. After only one season and then being shipped out again, maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that we aren't really hearing about. But yeah, at least we've gathered in a replacement in Saliki. We were linked with the Scottish midfielder as well, McGrath, who didn't happen, who me and you thought would be sort of like a backup if Saliki didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, good luck to Sam Morsy linking up with Paul Cook again at Ipswich.
Yeah, I think just finally touching on Sam Morsy, obviously, again, in similar breath to what I said about George Saville, he always give his all. He's one of them players where you thought he never, ever went out on the pitch and sort of didn't try. I think that the same can be said about certain other big earners that have left the club in the last 12 months. But no, Sam Morsy, we wish him the best of luck, and obviously, hopefully, he can get Ipswich, him and Hayden Coulson, back to the Championship. It would be nice to see Sam Morsy do a good job for Ipswich.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan, I just interrupted you. So finishing off on the outgoings, it was and still hasn't been confirmed from Nottingham Forest as of yet at the time of recording. Jed Spence, very, very late last night, there was reports that he was going to be joining Nottingham Forest on loan with an option to buy. Now, it hasn't been confirmed. It may be the case that the deal doesn't get confirmed by the EFL and he ends up staying. But in terms of if he has departed and gone out on loan to Nottingham Forest, how do you feel about Spence leaving?
I think it's probably the same way as I feel about Hayden Coulson going out. They both were introduced to the first team around a similar time under Jonathan Woodgate, and did both really impress playing in the left wing back and right wing back roles for us. But as time's gone on and as that Woodgate side's developed into more of a actual team rather than individuals just put together on a team sheet, I think that those two have sort of been filtered out as two of the lesser players in that squad, really. And I think Spence is sort of hit and miss when you look at his performances. One week he can be electric, the next he can just be it like playing with 10 men. Unfortunately, he can be anonymous. So yeah, I think him going out on loan to Forest, it's a strange one really, because I don't really know where he'll be getting all too much game time if he's playing further up the pitch, because they have options in themselves which are both academy graduates. Alex Mighton, who's around the similar age to Jed Spence, and Brennan Johnson, who of course gathered a few plaudits from the Premier League this transfer window after last season performing so well at Lincoln City. So I think in the case of Spence at Forest, if he does go there and if it is confirmed, I think he'll probably be playing in the right back role, which again is a strange one because he hasn't played there all too much in a four for us recently. He's been more of a wing back or in that right wing role, so a
Yeah.
strange one.
Yeah, I think on Spence, obviously, as you say, last season, I think he didn't really have the best season, in my opinion. I think he was very inconsistent, as you said, and I think a lot of people were quick to jump on his back. And in fairness, this season, we heard at the start of the season, Warnock say that he'd pulled Spence for a chat and sort of said, listen, it's time to book your ideas up. It's time to really get your head down and concentrate on working with the ability that you've got. Because I don't think it's a question of Jed Spence's ability. I think it's probably more a question of if he is, mentally able to perform consistently and stay interested in games and affect games in the way that he did when he first come through under Jonathan Woodgate. But yeah, there is an option to buy allegedly in this deal. What sort of price would you be looking for if Jed Spence was to leave?
I think what's been reported is quite different to what should be expected, really. I think, first of all, looking at the sides that were reportedly interested in Jed Spence to what is about to materialise is quite the contrast, really. Being linked with Leicester, Southampton, Everton, Wolves, all Premier League sides, and up within that mid-table range of sides, by the way, in the Premier League. And he's going to Nottingham Forest in the Championship, who have gained 1 point this season. So
Yeah,
I
one
think,
one point for I think I saw that it was maybe a few million, perhaps, that there was the
yeah,
option to buy. I can't remember the exact figure, but it wasn't anything above five, and I don't even think it was five, to be honest. It might have been three. I think
yeah.
I don't want to say for definite there, but
Well, yeah.
yeah,
I think with the current Jed Spence that we see at Middlesbrough, 3 million's an absolute steal, I think,
yeah,
unfortunately.
I think more in terms of the capacity to sell Jed Spence on, because I mean there obviously has been Premier League interest. Even if he goes to Forest and they signed him for such a low fee, I think one season later there's plenty of Premier League clubs that would probably still take a gamble on him because of his age.
Yeah. And of course he does have attributes that do that once they develop, um, you could have a player like Adama Traore really. Don't necessarily think that I'm comparing Jed Spence to Adama Traore, but with his pace, if he gets down that line and starts putting crosses into the box on a regular basis and those that assist chart starts totting up, I think he could be a very good player at this level.
Yeah, well, I mean that was it really in terms of departures yesterday, and we're still, like we say, wait to see whether Jed Spence's move did go through to Nottingham Forest. I mean, just in terms of the transfer window as a whole, if I said to you rank it out of 10, what would you give this summer's transfer window?
I'd probably give it an 8, really. I think to gain any more on that scale, I think we probably would have needed another striker, and we do need a left back or left-sided defender as a cover. But we've shipped out a lot of the young players on loan, which gains them valuable experience. And of course, some of the, in inverted commas, dead wood has gone out as well, with Saville, Morsey and Akpom all being deemed surplus to requirements by Neil Warnock. So yeah, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, for me, I think I'd probably go 8 as well. I think that would be a fair assumption. Obviously, we haven't really spoke about it in this video yet. We can briefly mention it now, I suppose, that we did lose loanees. We lost a lot of players on free. Obviously, Yannick Balassi, Mendes Lang, Niskins Cabano, Marvin Johnson, Ashley Fletcher, and Britta Sambalonga all departed. And I suppose it can be argued that they sort of fit in at the departures of this summer's window. But, I think in Hernandez, Boro, Ikpeazu, and obviously Olasanya as well, and the emergence of Isaiah Jones, I think potentially we could have done with one more body in that attacking area. But I think we've probably done quite a good job of replacing the players that have departed. And in fairness, a lot is there to be said about our recruitment team. And, there's a few deals that haven't gone through, whether it was their fault or not, or whether it was just us, not having the ability to compete with Fulham, is there to be debated. But I think, in fairness, 8 out of 10, and I think the recruitment team probably deserve a little bit of credit, actually, for once.
Yeah, I think it's been a good window for us. And in that Rodrigo Muniz saga, I think the club probably did all they could, really, from the reports that we heard, flying out to Lisbon to try and sort a deal. And yeah, I think it's sort of a sign that we're going in the right direction, that saga.
Yeah, definitely, Nathan. And I think that's probably a good place to leave it, to be honest. So, as always, for those listening on audio, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on whichever audio app you have, and leave some kind words in the review section. And for those watching on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and give us some comments. Let us know your thoughts, and even on Twitter as well. Tweet us, let us know what you think, how the transfer window went, and we will be back soon for another podcast, whether that is before Coventry or after. Obviously, coming up after the international break, we'll probably decide shortly. But yeah, hopefully by that time I've had a haircut, because I've spent this entire podcast trying to sort that mess out. For some reason, I haven't had it cut for about 5 weeks. So yeah, by the next podcast, hopefully that's been sorted. Yeah, that would be great, to be honest. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we will see you soon for another episode of the Boropolis podcast.